What is going on, boys and girls? Welcome once again to the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast on the Paddle and Fin Network. As always, it's your boy Armando. Great episode for you today. We're at the home stretch of the season here at Paddle and Fin. I think I got 3 more episodes before we wrap it up for the year. I got today's going to be Ewing Minor. Next week is going to be Nolan Minor. Ewing Minor's older brother, and we're in the year off with Cody Milton. That's going to be the last episode, I think, for this year. And I think that's going to be December 6th. But yeah, we'll take a little holiday break and then we'll wrap it up sometime in the second week of January with brand new content and episode in the Paddle and Fin and Bass Kayak and Beers. But I love the suggestions that you guys are bringing. I mentioned it on the intro for Cody Milton's episode. Well, anyway, that's going to be further on the line. But I love that some of you have emailed me or contacted me through social media. By the way, you can follow me on TikTok, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook on the Bass Kayak and Beers. You can also email me if you want to get a hold of me. Email me at basskayakandbeers@gmail.com. So I've gotten a lot of suggestions. I always ask for your feedback. So if you want to listen to some specific topic, or if you want me to have any specific guests, just reach out. Last suggestion I got was from Jay Valentin. He suggested I did more of the local regional tournament directors. I know there's their job. It's a lot of sacrifice, and usually at the local or regional level, those guys don't get paid. They do it because they love the sport, they love the community, and when you're a tournament director, everybody remembers your name when things don't go well. So I always like to give props and shout outs to the tournament directors that really put in the work, both on the local level and the national level. So I'm going to be reaching out some of the local tournament directors here in Texas. Last week, I got Chris Morales, who runs the former Southeast Texas Kayak Bass League, and now he's rebranding into the Texas Kayak Bass League. You can check that episode out. That came out last week. But yeah, that's pretty much it here in Texas. I was going to start off complaining about the cold weather because we're down to the 30s, but then I realized some of you up there in the Northeast are getting battered by snowstorms. So I'd be kind of foolish to complain about my mid-30s weather here in Texas. So yeah, it's a little bit colder for Texas, but I know for some of you up in the Northeast, uh, you're in my thoughts. I know it's getting battered, or it's going to get battered in the next couple of hours with snowstorms. So stay careful out there, and I'm sure you won't be hitting the water for at least a few more days. So when you do, hope you get to enjoy the water. And that's pretty much it. So this episode, again, we got Ewing Minor. Ewing Minor came up just short of the AOI. Was really pulling for him this year. I don't have favorites, but I really do respect some of the anglers out there, and I always root for them to at least have a great year. And Ewing Minor definitely had a great year last year. The national level for the Hobie T.O.C, for the Hobie BOS, I should say. His freshman year, he put up great numbers. I mean, great results. He was just almost got the AOY. This year, his sophomore year, he backed it up with another great year. And again, just came a little bit shy, but sooner rather than later, this kid is going to win an AOI and a T.O.C. Mark my words. So keep an eye out for this kid. So Ewing Minor is going to join us. Before we do that, we're going to quick waypoints commercial and a shout out to my sponsor. Go to douglasoutdoors.com. Check out the full lineup of LRS, X Matrix, and award-winning fly fishing rods. We'll have Ewing Minor join us in just a bit. Mr. Ewing Minor, the Prince. How you doing, sir?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Great, man. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Is it you're in Tennessee, right, Ewing?
Yes, I am.
Is it cold down over there? Is it getting cold?
It's not warm. That's for sure. It's been, low 30s, high 20s in the mornings, and warming up into the high 40s, low 50s. So still tolerable, but things are definitely starting to cool off. It's
You
not necessarily a bad thing. It makes the fishing really good in this part of the country.
Yeah, it really does. Some people complain about Texas fishing
Easy.
in winter. I'd rather fish a cold front in Texas than 105 degrees on the middle of August in Texas. That is for sure. But fishing is a lot better. Speaking of fishing, I was mentioning before you and I started recording, and I'll have to ask you: did you ever think you would have a problem on the back wall where you have no more rooms for your big poster checks?
I really didn't, but luckily they're starting to get a little smaller on the size of the checks. The pay's going up, but the actual the poster checks they're getting a little smaller, so I should be able to squeeze some more in there.
Yeah, it's more digits on the check, even if the dimensions of it are smaller. It's a good problem to have. But congratulations, man. I know this is your second season, and just looking at the wall behind you, I mean, you have a lot to be proud of. What did you how let me ask you this. How surprised are you that you've been able to achieve this kind of success in kayak fishing? Because I know you've been boat fishing for a while now, but
Yeah,
kayak fishing.
I mean my first kayak tournament was I'd say my junior year of high school. I fished one of the Virginia. I'm not quite sure what it is. Casey Reed runs them, or at least did at the time. It was on the Shenandoah. I should have cut a really good check, but messed up most of my pictures. But I was able to get big bass. I made sure to take every single possible angle and everything with that one. So I got big bass in my first kayak tournament, and then I fished a couple on lines. And between then and my first BOS on Seminole, I really didn't fish much. But growing up fishing in a kayak, that's how I really learned how to bass fish, was out of a kayak. So it's surprising to me that I can be this competitive with, the highest level you can get. But I mean, just it makes sense since I've spent so much time in a kayak. I know I've thrown the picture up there on social media a few times of me. It was the first time I ever got to take my kayak out fishing. I was somewhere in elementary school. I looked small compared to my 10-foot sit-in kayak. I was holding up a bluegill, but it just shows that, my parents, they really made sure to get us in the outdoors at an early age and got us in kayaks, because with 3 kids, that's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
It's very affordable.
Did you when you look at what you did last season, and nothing is guaranteed, right? Like, just because you found success last season doesn't automatically mean that you're gonna duplicate that the next season. But you have, obviously, because you're talented. You're not a one-hit wonder. You just didn't stumble on fish. Like you mentioned, you grew up doing this. You love this. You made it, your craft to get better at it, and it shows in the results. After the end of last season, did you feel confidence that you were able to duplicate? I'm sorry, what you did last season to this season?
Yeah, I figured I'm gonna be cold. Of course, it's really hard to, I think I had a first and 2 seconds last year as my top 3. I knew that would be very challenging to get. I came close to it, but just was missing that third really good finish. But I mean, it's still just fishing, going to different bodies of water. The competition definitely stepped up a little bit this year. More people showing up to each event. A lot of new talent. You're seeing a lot of new names towards the tops of the leaderboards at these events. So that's a good thing. We're trying to grow the sport, and seeing these events sell out earlier in the season, I'd really like to see all of them sell out next year. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, we would definitely want the growth of the sport to become even better. Like I said on the episode that's going to end in 2 weeks with Cody Milton, as a podcaster, I feel like sometimes there's things that need to be called out and things that need to be said in order to grow, but it's never out of and any malice. I want Bassmaster, I want KBF, I want the All American Bass Kayak Series, I want the new Native series, which is kind of like a previous MLF style, which is the Bass by Big Bass Hour or whatever they call it. I want all of them to succeed. Heck, even KFL. It may not be my thing, but if it grows and it helps grow the sport, why not? Let's see it. Let's see it grow, and it's all part of it, and that's what we, try to, we all want to grow our social media, our brand, but at the same time, we understand that you can't grow it by yourself. Just catching in a check is not gonna, in your case, it's not gonna help. It'll help you, but what does it do for the long term growth of the sport? And I know you're a great ambassador to the sport. You've always conducted yourself where people really gravitate to your level of professionalism, your good character, and it shows both on and off the water. The respect that even at a young age you've gotten from veterans like Ryan Lambert, Jeff Malata, and everybody else in the kayak fishing community. When you look at what you did last season, it seems to, the I guess the thought would be, well, you came up short, but you actually increase your overall Angler of the Year points from last year to this year. I think you went up like 4 points. Like, you did your work so even if you didn't get it, you did manage to show improvements in your game. What do you think? What did you attribute that? Even though you may not have gotten the AOI, but just the knowing that you got more points this year than last year.
Really, just putting 5 fish in the boat every day at the T.O.C. That's, if you don't do that, you don't have a shot. It's plain and simple. You have to have a good finish at the T.O.C. if you want a shot. And the first 2 days of the T.O.C. this year were really tough for me. I had a lot of fish in the last 30 minutes of those first 2 days that were, even though looking at the results, people might think that last day when I had my big bag was the most important. There's some catches that, I mean, really, really important catches I had late in the day on those first 2 days that helped bump me up. Those, it's not necessarily about going out there and busting a big bag every day. You've got to get your 5 and you've got to survive to have a shot going into the final day.
When you look at what you did last year at the T.O.C. and this year, obviously different lakes, not talking about technical aspect of it, but the mental, psychological, emotional aspect, whatever you want to call it, of what happened last year. When it was your tournament to win, you didn't get your 15 fish. Was there any lessons learned from that helped you in this year?
Well, last year, everything from practice that I had completely went away. So I had to scrap everything and go do something else. But I really I never settled down. I was moving 100 miles an hour no matter what I was doing. I was rushing, and I got the bites on day one that I needed, but I didn't get them all in the boat, probably just partially. Like, when you're doing good, it's easy to just relax, focus on each cast. But when you're struggling and you don't know what's going on, that's the hardest time to really. That's when it matters most, is to stay calm. You can say all you want, but when you're in that position and you don't know what happened to your fish, I mean, I've never seen anything like I had happen last year, where absolutely, and it's not like they weren't biting. They left. I was catching them on live scope. They all disappeared. And it's a mental thing. It's not that I wasn't prepared. It's when I went to make the adjustment, I might have changed where I was fishing, might have changed how I was fishing, but my mindset to, okay, I really need to slow down and just think about what I'm doing. I was just fishing. I didn't really have much of a purpose to what I was doing.
So on this season, like, I know it was tough at the beginning. is there anything that you kind of said like, okay, if this would have happened last season, like last T.O.C, like it happened last year, um, you maybe don't get your 15 fish. Did anything in your mind say like, oh no, wait a minute, I can't make this specific mistake, or I have to avoid going down this mental rabbit hole? Was there anything like that that kind of transferred to making different decisions on this one, regardless of, because
Well,
again, I know it's a different body of water and all that,
yeah.
but
This year, I definitely day one. I noticed my mindset was because I had a phenomenal practice. I didn't go telling a bunch of people. I told them, it's tough, it's slow. I wasn't catching many fish, but I also wasn't making a ton of casts. I was spending a lot of time looking at my electronics, and I thought I was going to go out there and bust 95 a day, no problem. Like when I got bit, it was 18 plus. The smallest fish I caught during practice that was a keeper was, I think, 16 and a half. So I was very confident. And I had a limit on day one pretty early, and I was feeling good. But as the day went on, I was getting more bites, and they were just small. And I just kind of felt the wheels coming off of the bus. Just I was scrambling, I wasn't focusing, fishing too fast, and it really, like, all the way up until the last, like, not many people know this, but I gave up with 80 inches on day one this year. It was that big storm rolled in. It was blowing super hard, and Steve Fields was sitting there, and I told him, I was like, screw this. I'm not gonna fish out in this storm. It's not worth it. And I was just hauling tail back to the ramp, and the thunder kind of settled down a little bit. So it's like, I guess I should make a few casts, and I caught because of 18 and 3/4 and an 18 in the last 15 minutes. Called 7 inches, which, like, it was. I had cut my losses at that point, and I didn't want to be out in a storm. I was like, it's like I have a limit. I might be able to make something happen, but yeah, it was a rough day on day one. But those two fish at the end of the day really helped anchor my bag.
well, going after day one, how did you feel? How did you feel? I'm sorry, going into day two. When you looked at the leaderboard, I think it was Brady Storms.
Brady
Um,
Stores.
yes, Brady Stores. I'm sorry. Thank you for that. He really like put a dominating performance. Did you feel like what was your mindset going into day two? What were you trying to accomplish at that point?
At that point, I was like, all right, I've caught enough to survive, but I knew what I was doing. I was like, I didn't really see it getting better after that point because the cold front had already knocked my fish back, and I didn't know what to do. I showed up day one day two to that spot where I culled at the very end of the day, and the water went from pretty dingy and I think it was in the mid to high 60s
Mm-hmm.
water temp, and I got there in the morning and it was low 50s, crystal clear. I fished stuff that I practice on, or stuff that I felt confident from practice on, for it wasn't long, less than 30 minutes, I'd say, and I scrapped everything. And I decided that I was like, I need to go find some deeper water. And I knew that I was around the fish because there were so many people in the top
Mm-hmm.
that were smashing them in my area. And I just, didn't have that little sweet stretch, which seemed to be very important. So I just started. I left everything behind me, and I was like, it's not going to work. When I went from places that were warm and dirty water to crystal clear, I was looking. I was like, there aren't fish here. Nothing's going on. Just left it, and when I was on my way to what I had fished it in practice, and I never really caught anything over. I've never caught a keeper out of that area, but it was deeper water near those grass flats that everyone was catching them on. I was like, with this cold front, they should be coming here. And the water was 10 degrees warmer there compared to where I had started the morning.
That's a big leap on that. Wow.
As I was working my way up there, and I was looking, I was like, oh, there's a kayak up there, and there's a bass boat next to him. Well, that was Brady Stores. So I went up to him. I asked him, I said, hey, where are you fishing? I don't want to get in your way. You've got a really good shot of winning this. And he told me, he said, this isn't my primary area. He said, you've got a shot at AOY. He said, fish where you want to fish. Don't worry about me. And we went back and forth. I was trying to get him to not let me fish there. And eventually a fish blew up. I mean, we were within 50 yards of each other. We were on opposite sides of a boat lane, but a fish came and chased bait, and he said, you should probably fish there. And I caught a 18 and a 17 on back-to-back cast. And I guess I later on caught a 16 and some change off of that area. And it got really slow. And then I went and I found some standing timber in 14 foot of water at the very end of the day. And I had a little spurt there at the end of the day. I had actually looked at it a little bit earlier in the day, and I guess I caught a 12 and a half off of that timber. But there were like 5 or 6 fish through 10 to 15 trees. When I came back at the end of the day, there were at least 50. So that had me feeling confident going into the final day. When I came back to the ramp, I told everyone at the house, I was like, I'm gonna catch them tomorrow. They're coming to me, which I guess I was right.
Spoke into existence.
Day 3 was nothing short of incredible. I've had a lot of good days on the water, and it's up there. I don't know if it's number 1, but I've had better days lengthwise, weight-wise, but I just caught so many quality fish that day. I started off in the morning where I had caught those 2 next to Brady the day before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had 89 inches in the first hour and a half. At that point, I knew that would have gotten me into Worlds based off of, or at least should get me into Worlds based off of the way that things were going. And after I caught those were on a small 1/4 ounce lipless crankbait, and I went just inside of that river and that bank where there were fish suspended in the timber. They were still there, but I couldn't get them to bite. And one of the guys that I was staying with, Brian Scarberry, he gave me a glide bait the day before. And I tied it on. I'd never thrown one of them, and it was the perfect size for, in comparison to the bait fish that the fish were eating. But I noticed that those fish, they'd push bait up against the cypress trees because they almost made a bank, even though I never saw a bank on the lake other than at the ramp.
Yeah.
It's all cypress. But so every time they just push them up against the bank, and it wasn't really it wasn't like it was one would randomly bust here, one would randomly bust there. There was a 100-yard stretch, and when they would come up, it seemed like there was a 5-pounder at every single tree.
Wow.
It was unreal. And I went up and down that 100-yard stretch of bank all day long, and I kept catching them and kept catching them. And it just, from the morning till the end of the day, there were some periods of time that were slow, but it was pretty pretty steady compared to what I had seen. It was unreal.
How many fish did you think you caught on day 3?
35, 45.
Wow. I think
Most
I was
wide bait.
wow. I think I was listening to I know I was listening to the KBN podcast earlier today while I was driving. And I think Brian Nelly said he at some point, I can't remember if it was day 1 or day 2, but he caught like 100 bass or something like that. I'm like, wow, damn, that's even I maybe it's a little bit exaggerated number, but still, just the fact that you caught that many, that they were that, on kind of like crazy kind of weather, because like you mentioned, it was really temperatures were going up and down like Texas usually does. Then you had that storm coming in, so it's like it can really put you in a funk trying to figure out how they're going to react to the different climate changes.
I think during practice leading up to the event, the fish were really spread out. That's why
Yeah.
people were kind of just, catching fish, but they were scattered. And everyone had a pretty good start to the tournament. A lot of people had a good start, a lot better than I expected. But you saw as the tournament went on, like on Sunday, there were very few small limits.
Yeah.
People that had limits had big limits. And I think that's just that cold weather really concentrated those fish. And you were either on them or you weren't around fish hardly at all. Between the way the wind affects that lake is, I think that really played more than the actual cold weather, because it would blow this clear water in, and that clear water would always be very cold compared to the dirtier water.
Mhm.
And I avoided that clear water. And I think, there were probably a lot of people that their water temperature dropped and they just assumed it dropped everywhere that much, but it didn't. There were pockets of warmer water, and there were a lot of fish in those areas.
That's really interesting, because conventional bass fishing wisdom tells you, look for clear water. Bass don't like it when it's muddy, murky water. But in this case, even though that may hold true, in this case, it was more based on the temperatures, right?
And it wasn't even necessarily you had to be in muddy, murky water, but there was the muddy water that was good, and there was tannic water that could be clean, but it's not that. The clear water I'm talking about, it looks like it's a bathtub. You're sitting in 6 foot of water, looking at the bottom like there's nothing there. And that water was the really cold stuff. That tannic, typical for Florida or a lot of grass lakes. That water was still holding heat, but that clear stuff, I think it was water that blew out from those really shallow flats. I think the wind pushed it out there, and that's why it was cold.
Interesting. Yeah, I probably would have made that same mistake, that thinking, oh, I gotta look for clear water. But like you mentioned, at that point, it's really the temperature that dictates where the fish is gonna be, not necessarily that it's clear or stained. That's great knowledge, and I mean, props to you for kind of like figuring that out and kind of like making the adjustments. I wanted to highlight something that I think it's very important, because a lot of times I think people kind of focus on the rivalries and stuff like that, and stuff that goes on, and bad blood and stuff like that. And something that you mentioned, really, I wanted to highlight for people that are thinking into getting into bass tournaments, because I think this is like 99% of the experiences that we have on the water. And what I wanted to highlight is, this is a tournament that the winner makes $45,000, and here you are, day 2, I'm sorry, with Brady Stores, who was leading, after day 1, and he's helping you to achieve your goals. And that speaks to why I love this kayak fishing community. Any other sport, it will be like, no, I don't want this kid to beat me. I'm not gonna give him. I'm gonna block whatever access I can. I'm gonna protect my spot. I'm not gonna give him any tips. I'm not gonna say anything. In fact, if I can, I'm gonna ask him to leave.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case with Brady Stores. And again, props to Brady Stores. I mean, when you think about it, it's $45,000 on the line, and this kid, I mean, and Brady Stores is leading after they won.
Yeah.
Then
Well,
Brian's. Go ahead.
some people might think like I was like, okay, he's fishing up here. Like I was planning on, I knew that he was fishing right in there, and I was planning on going on past him, and he wanted me to fish there, and he helped me out a lot, and it came back around to help him because on the final day, he came back in and I told him exactly what was going on in that area. I was like, they'll chase bait up. I said, if you get your bait in there, they'll eat it. And when he came back in there and he was fishing along, and the fish pushed bait up against the bank, and he threw out there and caught a 19.5, which called him from 4th place to 2nd place in the end of the day. And he got his picture taken at 2:59 and 30 seconds or something.
That is crazy.
But he told me, he said that he caught that fish on a fluke, and he said that he would have not been prepared with that bait ready to fire it out if I hadn't told him, hey, they keep coming up and blowing up, be ready. And I'm glad that I could help him out in that way, because he
helped you. Yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't for him saying, hey, yeah, you can fish any of this all you want, I'm sure it probably would have been different if it was his primary spot. But he said that he just went there to kind of fill out his limit. He could get a couple more bites there. But, I mean, if it wasn't for him telling me, you can go ahead and fish any of this that you want, then I probably would have had a pretty terrible tournament.
Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of people need to keep in mind when fishing kayak tournaments is we can't move around a whole lot. If you see someone and you want to fish the same area as them, because I was coming there and I saw him, was planning on going on past him, but if you talk to people, usually in kayak tournaments at least, like there are very few times that I've asked someone, hey, like, what do you want me to stay off of? They usually just say, fish whatever you feel like you need to.
That's right.
I mean, it's usually when I am in that same situation, I try to limit myself to like if some random person had come in on the final day and asked me, hey, what do you want me to stay off of? I would have said, I'm going up and down this 100-yard stretch of bank. You can fish anywhere else. There were fish straight across from me on the opposite bank, and just learning how to work together, because we've got to share that water. There were a lot of people in that area. It's going to happen. And just respect on the water it's communication between each other to make sure that you never want anyone to feel like you're just intruding on them.
Yeah.
But Brady was definitely, he's a stand-up guy. I really enjoyed sharing water with him.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to highlight. Also, Brian Scarberry giving you a bait, that helped you out, made a difference. I know your brother Nolan Minor listening to one of the conversations. So, well, actually listening to Brian Neely talk about his win, how he shared the water with Nolan Minor as well. All that camaraderie. It's unfortunate, and I'm guilty of it as much as anybody else. Of sometimes we highlight, things that happen on the water that might scare off some people that are new to the sport or trying to get to the sport. But the reality is 99% of the interactions we have on the water are experiences just like you and Nolan. and Brian and Brady shared, which is good camaraderie, people looking out for each other. I know in Lake Darnell this year, I had that same experience. After having a good day one, day two, having conversations with other people on the water, and the same thing when I was in Toledo, but struggling. I made it a point, if I'm in the body of water, and I see somebody coming, it's like, hey man, I'm just here fun fishing at this after my struggles in day one. You can have this spot, and because it comes around.
Yeah.
What you put into it, like everything else, is what you're gonna get out of, and that's why I encourage everyone. And again, for those out there listening that are thinking and maybe intimidated, like I was at some point of getting into trails and national trails, don't feel intimidated. The majority of the interactions that you're gonna have are gonna be positive and are gonna be interactions that are gonna make you a come out and be a better person and be a good person and a good angler and a good competitor. And again, we're talking about a tournament that was $45,000 on the line. I wouldn't have blamed anybody for being very protective and trying to chase a check, but the fact that everyone involved, from what your experience, Nolan's, Brady's, and Brian's, it's amazing to see that we still, even with big money on the line, we still remember that we are humans first, and we have a sport that can be dangerous at times with Mother Nature, and we have to look out for each other. So again, big props to you and everybody involved in this. And again, if anybody out there listening, don't get intimidated by it. It's guarantee you're gonna have great experiences. Like everything in life, you might have some not so pleasant experience, but that's it with everything in life. There's going to be the good and the bad. So just focus on the good things. Going back to the Angler of the Year race, I remember asking you this question last year when I was kind of like highlighting some of the top anglers that were heading into the T.O.C. that had a shot at the AOY. And you were one of my first guests last year before the T.O.C. And I remember asking you, how did you prefer to go into the T.O.C. with the pressure of being ranked number one, being the pole position, being the leader of the points, or just below it with a realistic shot at winning it? I remember your answer was, I'd rather be in the pole position because I have control of myself. Looking back at it, last year you were in the pole position. This year you were in the fourth position. What do you think? See, now that you've seen both sides of it, do you feel like being number one puts more pressure on more unwanted pressure on you? Do you feel that you were more comfortable knowing that that maybe you're not getting the attention because you're kind of further back? How do you compare the T.O.C. from last year to the T.O.C. of this year in relations to the standings and how it affected you?
I really don't think that where I was sitting in AOY had an effect on me because I knew both years I had a shot at winning it. Like, regardless of if you're a little ways back or you're in the lead, you've still got to catch the fish. I didn't feel any. I mean, I knew that, like, I feel like people expect me to catch them at tournaments. So regardless, I was one of the names that was thrown out there, as well as my brother and all of the other people up towards the top of the AOY race. But I expect myself to catch them. Like, I'm still going to put the pressure on myself at every single event to do the best I can. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, regardless of if I was in the driver's seat coming in or not. It's I'd still rather be in the points lead, because if I was in the points lead this year, I would have won the AOY.
Yeah.
But it's just, I didn't have a good event on Eufaula, and it is what it is.
When you look at it from at the tournament, the start of the T.O.C., obviously the simplest ways to look at it is go there, try to get a win, and let the chips fall where it might. You can't control what Cody Milton and I think Russ Snyder was ahead of you, and Christian Fisher was second. I think it was Christian Fisher second, Russ Snyder third, you're fourth, and Nolan was fifth, if I remember correctly. So obviously the plan is simple. Try to win it and see, where Cody Milton, the rest of the guys above you fall. And if they fall farther behind, then that gives you a shot at the AOY. Going into day 3, I don't know if you looked at the leaderboard, but it seemed pretty obvious by 9 o'clock who was going to win the T.O.C. I mean, Brian had an insurmountable lead.
Yeah,
and even after you caught your 5 limit, you would need it to up like it was daunting.
I would have needed another fish, and not even just any fish. I would have needed a 6 big fish to catch up to him. He completely dominated the event, and you'll get to hear a lot more about it when you have my brother on next week. But
yeah,
he had those fish figured out. My brother, they had times that they were throwing in the exact same spot, and it was a specific bait that he threw. He eventually, after he had it won, I mean, he knew he had it won. There was no one going to catch up to him. He gave Nolan one of those baits, and Nolan made a few calls on it.
Now, let me ask you this. So, at any point did you look at the leaderboard and say, okay, I'm not going to win it, but I'm still going to try to get the biggest bass you can, right? To try to give you shots. Did at any point you looked and started doing math in your head, like, I need to finish this with this distance between Cody to win the AOY? Did that even cross your mind?
No, I was just I wasn't worried about anything behind me on the leaderboard. I was just worried about trying to get further up it. I mean,
it's funny,
you can't control what other people do.
That's true, though. That's true, but I guess there's 2 ways to look at it. Either you're competing like you guys are, and I say this because even though the episode is going to air in December 6th, I had Cody. I just recorded with Cody Milton yesterday, and we're talking about it. And I was telling him, "Am I the only guy out there who's like transfixed on like I want to see doing the math in my head, going hour per hour? Okay, Ewing is here, Cody is here, Ewing or Nolan is here, Russ is on this spot. How much? I love the math. I don't love math, but I love doing the math of trying to figure out who's going to win the AOY, especially when I already knew, like, by 9 a.m., okay, Brian is going to win the T.O.C. That's a foregone conclusion. As a fan, and again, it's different when you're a competitor than it is to be a fan, obviously, because as a fan, I just get to watch you guys do, and this is what I would love at some point, to be able to have this sport being televised, even if it's just pre-recorded. But just to be able to see all the things that go on. But in my mind, I was like, okay, Ewing is here, Nolan is here, Cody is here, and I was, as soon as they took the leaderboard off, I already had written down the list. Okay, if Ewing finishes second, which I kind of figured by the timelines out, it's gonna be like Ewing and Nolan gonna flip flop between second and third, and then I was like, okay, so Ewing and Nolan flip flop between second and third. Where does Cody Milton have to fall down to for him to lose the AOY? To me, that was super interesting. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's crazy that neither you nor Cody were even, if you're being honest about it, I'm sure you are, but that you didn't even thinking about that. That to me was the whole kind of, and I think listening to, what was it? Ryan Lambert talked about it on the KBN. It looks like he was, as fans looking at the same way, like, what's going to happen now? Who's going to bring AOY? And I think that's that piece of the sport that once it gets televised and we can see it live, we're going to be like, oh my God, this is going to be like the really exciting part about the sport. Having the game within the game of watching the sport is what I think makes it a lot more interesting. A lot of people that don't understand the sport, they just think it's just catching 5 fish, but there's a game within the game, especially when we're talking about AOY and the T.O.C. There's a race, there's the T.O.C, and then there's the Angler of the Year. To you, what to you would be more significant aside from the money? Because obviously T.O.C is $45,000, AOY is $5,000. Although AOY, that means you won a bunch of tournaments during the season too, so it kind of adds up. The math does the same thing, whether you in T.O.C or AOI. But as money aside, what to you means a lot more, a T.O.C or AOI?
AOI. The T.O.C.'s one tournament. Anyone can go out there,
given Sunday,
qualify
right?
for the T.O.C. and then have the fish on their side. Really, it's. I know when Ryan Lambert won the T.O.C. Here in Knoxville, I've fished that spot several times that he won it off of. But those fish, they got really concentrated there. Same with Brian this year, and they found those fish. They got them to bite. That's a whole nother thing. But you have to have all the stars aligned to win the T.O.C. But with AOI, it's kind of that's a whole season.
Yeah.
You've got to really put in your work and have some solid finishes to get that.
T.O.C aside, because I know the T.O.C for this year was a lot more. Obviously, you did a lot better than you did last year. But T.O.C aside, which one stings more not winning? This year's AOI or last year's AOI?
Last year's.
Because you're in the lead, I'm assuming, yeah.
Last year's was because I I guess I did hook the fish to win it this year, but I don't know, just not having 5 on day one. That every time I don't have a limit, it just really, really bugs me.
Oh, I would imagine, yeah. And especially when you are accustomed to achieving this type of success. And I say that because I mean it's different for each one. Each one have our own kind of moral victories. For me, catching 10 fish, in a 2-day tournament, 5 the first day, 5 the second day, I'm happy with that, even if I'm in the 100th position to me. But for you, obviously, it's different. You expect more of yourself because of your pedigree as a competitor and the results that you already have achieved in the past and continue to achieve. So there is that, it's success is related to our own, potential. And obviously your potential is a lot higher than most. What have you learned from last year, this year that you want to take into 2023, if there's anything that stands out?
I mean, I'm just slowly growing as an angler. I'm getting more comfortable in my kayak. Now my kayak's my space. It's my own platform. I'm very comfortable with it, and that's huge. Getting something that you're comfortable with,
Yeah.
regardless of if it's because I'm sure Drew Gregory feels the same way in kayak as I do out there in my boat, as he calls it. But yeah, just being comfortable with your equipment. The more bodies of water you see, the more experience you have, you're going to improve. And I don't think I've had any major improvements in the past 2 years, but it's just learning a few little things at a time. Because that way, when you see something, instead of having to spend an hour trying to figure out what these fish are doing, you might see something happen on your electronics, or a fish coming up chasing bait, and you've seen that before with similar conditions. What to throw, or at least something that should work.
One of the things that I remember when I had Ryan Lambert for the first time last year, and I asked him, who do you think is the best kayak fisherman at that point? The first name he mentioned without hesitation was you. And I'm like, wow, that's high praise for somebody that's in the first year and such a young man, considering there's Drew Gregory, there's Cody Milton, there's Christian Fisher, Guillermo Gonzalez, all those greats. But he was very confident in saying that. And one of the things he mentioned why he believed you were the best at that point in time, and even today, is because the level of confidence that oozes out of you when you're on the water. Even he can tell just by watching you cast that you you carry yourself in a certain way that just screams total confidence. What I mean, where does that confidence come from at such a young age, knowing that you're going against guys that have, that have been doing this for so long, and are such great at it? But what is gives you the confidence to think or to say, to yourself, I can go toe to toe with the best of them?
Between experience and momentum, really. I feed off of momentum. Catching fish just leads me into catching more. It boosts my confidence, and just I go out there, and in my mind, I'm like, all right, I can beat these people. I've beat them before. That's you kind of got to have a little bit of a cocky mindset.
Yeah.
Not don't put that towards your attitude, but going out there telling yourself I'm better than all of these people. I mean, that's, to me, just that's the best way to have high confidence going on the water is being confident that you can beat them. I mean, that's all it is. And I think that even a lot of people that might struggle in tournaments, if you go out there and you're thinking, wow, like I'm fishing against all these big names, you got to have confidence in yourself, believe in yourself. And if you fish with confidence, I can guarantee you'll catch more fish.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works out, because I think a lot of it is mental. We focus on what bait, what's its water temperature, what should I be throwing. But once you start, and confidence comes in after you get results, not just in tournaments, but personally, like going out there, fun fishing, catching 5 fish. That's something that I try to do. It's every time I go out, it's like, let me see if I can catch at least 5 fish. Versus when I started, it was like, I'll be lucky if I catch one in the next 3 months, let alone today. So that hard work breeds confidence. And I like what you said, that there has to be a certain level of cockiness in it. And I feel that's the same way now. That is not something that you reflect. Most people won't reflect outwards. Like, you're not gonna be cocky, on the water, in the way you treat other people. But within yourself, there has to be that little beast mentality. There has to be that little cockiness that says, I can take this guy out, or this angler out, because it's females, or even Christian Fisher, one of the best. Like, you have to put yourself in the mindset, yeah, I can take them out, yeah, I can win them. Otherwise you're not, otherwise you're just donating money. So there comes a point where you're like, okay, I've done this enough where I'm actually want to win a couple of more checks. I actually want to get a couple of more I actually want to get a few wins under my belt. But that comes obviously with doing it and practicing and taking the time. One of the things that I really admire about what you've done, when the season started, Toledo Bend, you had, I don't want to sound insulting, but obviously by your standards, you would probably say Toledo Bend was a disaster for you. I think you mentioned it this year.
Toledo Bend was the biggest disaster I've ever had.
I didn't want to say it, but I know I had you on the podcast afterwards and you told about it. But one of the things that impressed me about it is, you didn't, a lot of anglers would, you get it, they go on streaks, right? You feel confident, then all of a sudden something happens, weather change, a new lake that you've never been there before. You have a bad tournament, and your confidence, your psyche completely crashes, and it lingers for 2 or 3 tournaments. But you really bounced back. Was there anything after Toledo Bend that made you question your confidence?
No,
you just forgot, amnesia, and let's move on to the next one.
Well, when I had 4 fish on day 1 of Santee Cooper, that didn't help me much. But it's just, I had some unfortunate events with losing fish, breaking fish off in those events. I got the bites, so you can't be mad about that. And I don't think they were even things that I could necessarily control. It's just I didn't get the fish in the boat. Well, one of the fish on Toledo Bend,
I remember that.
I jabbed one with the net. That was definitely my fault. I left the net at home the next day. I got mad at that net. I actually threw that net away at Santee Cooper after day one. I just felt like it had a bad omen on it. And I finally got a net that I liked, and Broken Bow was my first tournament with that one.
And you won it. No, you won it. You came second.
Yeah,
I know there was a local, not a local guy. Who was it? Trend? Yes.
Tuvu. I stayed with him. T.O.C.
Yeah.
He's a really cool guy.
Yeah, he did. I think he went there. He really earned that one because if I remember correctly, he went there like a week before and he just practiced his butt off. One more thing that I wanted to touch on, and I remember talking to Cody Milton, talking about describing himself as a junk fisherman, which is kind of like dish the electronics, don't pay too much attention to it, and just focus on what's in front of you, and go by instinct and by what you think you can catch. You seem to have a good of both. You're definitely known for the way you use electronics, and I've heard from more than one angler saying if they're the best kayak angler with electronics by far is Ewing Minor. But at the same time, you've had success on lakes that are not really conductive to using electronics, such as Caddo, and on river trails that you also they're not a lot of deep water. What do you feel you're better at? Is it electronics the strongest part of your game?
Sometimes I surprise myself with live scope. I enjoy using it. It's really whatever you enjoy doing the most. Spent a lot of times just catching crappie and white bass and stuff on live scope, and that really just it helps with if I see a fish at 60 feet, I can hit my bait at 65 feet every single time, 5 feet past it, just because I've used it so much. Not even bass fishing. Every time I go out, I use it. I can still catch fish shallow all my life, but just having something that you're really good at, it helps. And it just kind of came naturally to me because I've always liked sight fishing for cruisers and stuff, which played a lot when I fished the tournament on Hartwell in the BOS in the spring. And just having something you're confident in, I was watching fish react. I love doing that. And whether it's watching them do it on a screen or watching them do it with my eyes, that's part of the glide bait at Caddo on day 3. Just having a bait that you can manipulate to where you make the fish react. I've always found that fascinating, watching how fish move and knowing when they're about to bite, and you can use that same. You can read their body language on forward-facing sonar, just like you would if you're looking at them in clear water. And it's kind of understanding fish behavior, just stuff you've seen a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I congratulations again, man. It seems like you're not like, what is it, like one trick pony kind of thing. You've well-rounded, even at a young age, you're well-rounded, and you're only going to get better. You're going to get better with electronics as electronic gets better, and your instincts as a fisherman and sight fisherman are going to get better as you grow into the sport. So it's kind of scary to think how good you're going to be 5-6 years from now as we see the sport of kayak bass fishing evolve and grow. And if it is your decision to stay with it or move on to bigger things, whatever it is, we wish you the most success. I wanted to ask you this question, and I know this might be hurtful to ask you this, but I gotta ask it. Each year we see stuff that happens, and then there are rule changes. One of the rules that kind of came back to bite you, I would say, is used to be the T.O.C was double points, and there was, and probably unfair to Jordan Marshall because he got the like. I felt like like I felt bad because it seemed like Jordan Marshall needed to apologize, which he actually has apologized for for something he doesn't have to apologize. Obviously, for winning the Angler of the Year based on what he did on the T.O.C compared to what you did on the season, and fair or not fair or not fair, obviously the results cost you the T.O.C. This year, the rules have changes. If it would have stayed the same, you would be the Angler of the Year this year, probably because the points would have been double. So that means you would have ended up ahead of Cody Milton. Did you think about the irony of that? Like, man, if they wouldn't have changed the rules, I would have
I've
gotten my
thought about it, but I think that's the way they have it now is the way it should be. Cody went out there and whooped everyone's tails.
Yeah.
And he earned it. He had a better season than anyone else, flat out. It's not like he just had a mediocre season. Well, not a mediocre, but a better than average season and went out there and smashed him on the T.O.C. Other people stumbled. He was consistent. He had really good finishes, and he did better than me. Like, flat out, he did better than everyone else. He caught him at those 3 events, and he caught him at the T.O.C, and I think he deserves it more than anyone else.
And that's true. And I mean, the rules were meant for that, to kind of highlight the season. It just seems unfair. You got the short end of the stick because either the rules came a year too early or a year too late. If it would have been a year earlier, you would have won it last year. If it would have been a year later, you would have won it this year.
I'll get it.
Either ways, I felt bad for you in that aspect.
I did not know that until they called out the AOI. No one told me they changed it. I heard that they were gonna change it.
Oh, you didn't know they had changed it?
I did not. Really? I wasn't paying attention to the AOI stuff. I didn't want to think about it. I probably would have fished Wolf and Fox if I knew that it wasn't double points. Don't know if I would have been able to cull a finish out, but it's just might have changed my approach a little bit more in trying to really close that gap a little more in the last few events.
I thought it was funny when Jordan Marshall got up to the stand, when he collected these checks. He's like, I hope one of the Minor brothers so people get off my case. Which I always say. I had Jordan Marshall. I don't know if you listened to that episode. I was like, man, I feel bad because it's like it seems like you're the evil guy that stole Ewing Minors. And of course, that's not the case. That was just the rules back then. But at the same time, looking at it today, it's like, man, Ewing Minor, I could see how Ewing Minor would feel cheated twice by the rules. But Jordan, speaking of that,
I barely knew Jordan at the T.O.C last year, but since then, we've spent some time together on the water, and I've become very close friends with him, and he's a great guy. He calls me his little brother.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny that I fell right at the T.O.C. I fell right between my actual older brother and then my Tennessee
adoptive
brother.
Yeah, no, and I did have him on the podcast, and he did speak highly of you, which is great. And he was telling us a story about the Angler of the Year race in Tennessee. That you called them and you're like, you better get a 24-inch bass, otherwise you're losing it. Something on all those lines.
We were fishing a turn at the state championship.
That's right.
Chickamauga.
Chickamauga.
He barely beat me. I told him, I said, I'm going to catch another big one and I'm going to pass you, but I just didn't get that bite. I was feeling very confident, but we're on and off the water. We're always calling each other, talking crap. And it's good to have a few friends that you can be a little cocky with. And
little trash talk never hurt anybody.
I never trash talk a random person, but but him and Ryan and Jackson as well. We're always trash talking each other and helps keep things interesting.
Well, you got one of the best trash talkers as a mentor in Lion Lambert, and I say that obviously with respect, but definitely a good coach Trash talking coach Ryan Lambert. Love Ryan Lambert. I wanted to ask you one more thing. I completely forgot what it was. Okay. Speaking of rules, there's what's dominating kind of the headlines now that the season is over is rule changes and what rule changes should come. In your mind, Ewing, do you feel there should be any rule changes? And if you do, what rules would you like to see upgraded or changed?
So how they had the designated launches at the
Mhm.
T.O.C, I honestly love that. I hate looking and trying to find ramps, hate trying to find out if it's public or not. It gives a nice, clear line. You can launch here or you can't launch here.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that because instead of looking at an area of the lake and then trying to zoom around on Google Maps, try to find a ramp, and you might not find the closest ramp and someone beats you to it, just being able to, they had it, you clicked on the link and it pulled up Google Maps and it had markers on each of the designated launches. And I'd really like to see that moving forward. I think people are probably gonna. I'll probably get a lot of hate for this, but I don't think that the portaging rule should be as strict. I think that if I can be out there and I can look at them and watch the fish eat my bait, why can't someone go drag their kayak over a log? I mean, I think there should be some sort of hard boundary to prevent people from, going to a whole nother body of water, and the designated launches will help that. But I mean, even in the event of someone on day one goes and smashes them in the back of a creek, we have a storm overnight, a tree falls.
Yeah.
In a kayak, that's the point of a kayak, is to be able to get back to stuff. Like, I think that as long as you stay on the same body of water, you launch it. I think that's why the designated launches would help, because you wouldn't have as many issues with, this person's barely even, people worried about they were on the completely different body of water.
Yeah.
But I think that it's fun to drag your kayak over stuff. It's part of what kayak fishing is, and as long as they have those hard boundaries, if you can't go past this point up so or so creek, if there's a log there or a shallow shoal, go past it, drag past it, because you can float down a river now during a regular event.
Yeah.
How come someone that doesn't have someone to give them a ride can't go drag up that shoal?
Yeah.
But aside from that, I like that you can communicate on the water. I like being able to just sit there on the phone. It helps keep me calm. I'll be on the phone with Jordan or Nolan or Ryan, and we're really just having normal conversations. It's not even, oh, you need to come throw this there. It's just keeping each other company. It gets lonely out there by yourself in a kayak with slow fishing. Helps me keep my head in the game. But yeah, really, I feel like the communication and the boundaries, portaging, those are the hot topics right now. But
yeah,
it's hard. It's hard to fish in a kayak all day without at least having someone to talk to.
Yeah. No, and I totally agree with you. I really could care less about the communication rules. At the end of the day, you have to catch them. I mean, people can tell me, hey, and it's like in the Hobie BOS. I know it's like you can't ask anybody, other than somebody's fishing on the tournament.
Yeah.
Which kind of was kind of weird, because I was on Toledo Bend. There was another tournament running beside it, which was the Southeast Texas Kayak Bass League. So I can ask you, but maybe the person right next to you is only fishing the Southeast, so I can't ask them, even though they hold. So to me, the communication part of it is like, you still, at the end of the day, you still have to catch them.
Yeah, there's gonna be people that help each other out, but I think you should be able to help each other out.
Yeah,
that helps build a tighter bond throughout the sport when people are able to help each other, and you're not completely isolated from them. And I mean, if other people are doing it, why aren't you?
Yeah.
There's no reason.
That
You just gotta, regardless of if you think other people are better than you, if you have 3 or 4 people, a tight knit group, it happens, college tournaments too. You're not allowed to communicate on the water over your phone in college tournaments, but still, you get off the water, you talk to your team, see what's working, see what's not, and you can really increase your success. A lot of professionals do it. I think they completely got rid of communication in MLF, like even between days of the tournament, for the pros, and I know a lot of them aren't very happy about that because they can't even talk fishing with their buddies,
which is hard for fishermen not to do. Let's be honest.
Really,
I think
it's very hard.
If it's
I don't know if it was really made public, or if it was just people within the T.O.C, but AJ did a self-report text. If you're on the water and say you're throwing a green pumpkin jackhammer and some old guy comes by on a boat and says, you need to be throwing a white one. Well, instead of worrying, if I win this and I get a lie detector, even if you don't use that information, you still received it. That's breaking a rule. And he made it to where you just text him, tell him what happened. He sends it out at the end of the day in an email to all competitors. It says, an angler was told to throw a white jackhammer, and gives everyone that information, and you don't have to worry about it. It just takes the stress off of your shoulders of, this random guy told me something. I wasn't even trying to get it.
And that's a double edge, and I didn't know about that. But that to me is a double edge because I'm not saying I wouldn't do it, but what I'm saying, I wouldn't do it. Let me clarify that. But get 200 anglers on a specific body of water. I wouldn't put it past somebody to throw a fluke when the fluke is not what because then they start, people can easily throw down false information to throw
and
again.
I'm sure there was false information going around, but there's always doc talk.
Yeah, and that's what I mean.
Really doc talk in an email.
And that's what I side with you. What I think you're right. If you really can't police it evenly, then why have that rule? To me, the whole communication rule is, and I get it, and again, I'm not criticizing AJ. AJ is always going to try to look what's best for the sport. And his way of thinking might be different than mine. Doesn't mean he's a bad tournament director. Doesn't mean that I think he's horrible and that you could. No. Let's pump the brakes. I don't want anybody thinking that I'm here playing armchair tournament director and criticizing AJ. I'm not saying that at all. He has a way to think about it, and at the end of the day, he's a tournament director, far more experienced than I am, by the way. So my thought process is I could really care less who tells who what, because at the end of the day, as long as the person that's winning it catched it on his catching himself, nobody gave him the fish. Listen, you earned it. It's all about getting information, and knowing. Otherwise, we're just out there trying to stumble on fish. So I could care less. I'd rather have it just open, and that way it doesn't matter who said what, because it's not part of the rule, because at the end of the day, you have to catch him. The porting gym rule, I actually agree with you on that one. I think, listen, if we all throw from the public boat launches and you want to hike up 20 miles to find your fish, and you're willing to portage through trunks and whatever, shallow beds or whatever, oyster bars, whatever it is on the way, and you want to put physically the demands of going through it and coming back, by all means do it. You've earned it. You do it. I don't think you should throw, I'm beating a dead horse here, but my main thing is don't launch below, on the other side of it, and just say that if you could, wanted to, you could have done it. That to me is just unethical. But so I agree with you with the portaging rules. I mean, if you can manage it and you don't mind going through the physical part of it, by all means do it. As long as the water is connected and it's not a man-made obstruction. But again, that we'll leave it up to the tournament directors. But what I think it's key, it's going to be the more than anything, the designated launches is what's going to change it. At least that way, kind of like not everyone is in the same place, but at least nobody's launching 20, 30, 10 miles away on isolated creek where we don't know what's going on. Everybody's different launches. Everybody is, it's not in the obscurity where nobody can see you and get away with funny stuff and stuff like that. And as the checks get bigger and bigger, now we're up to $10,000 regularly on a Hobie BOS tournament. That money is going to bring in attention. We've seen it on the walleye tournaments.
Definitely.
When there's money involved, there's going to be people that are maybe just not in for the right reasons. So that's why I think the rules are to avoid having people outside the kayak fishing community come here and try to take away from what we've, in the community have built and earned by getting, by supporting these trails. Real quickly, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you your relationship with Nolan Minor. Your older brother. What's the rivalry like? I know you as brothers and siblings, you help yourself within the rules. You help yourself on the water and all that. But is there any trash talk between us? Is there at any point in any tournaments that if you're like, I want to beat my brother, or Nolan on the other side, I can't let my little brother show me up? Is there any of those dynamics in your relationship once you're on the water?
I mean, I always want to beat him. One of our buddies, he's from New Jersey, I believe. His name's Mike, but he doesn't fish kayak tournaments or anything. But we've got an ongoing joke called the Elite Minor. Who's the Elite Minor? And you can ask Nolan about it. He determined that since I beat Nolan in AOI that I remained the Elite Minor. But I'm always wanting to beat him. I'd never wish anything bad on Nolan.
Of course, yeah.
But I mean, we're just both very competitive fishermen, but we know how to help each other without hurting ourselves. Like, for example, the T.O.C, I had to go to class on Tuesday, so I got to practice Wednesday and Thursday. Nolan was down there. He started his practice on Sunday. And what he determined in those days was, okay, I'm not getting bit here. I'm not getting bit here. This is the only part of the lake that makes sense. So he was able to tell me, hey, he said, this is where I'm fishing. He said, you can fish this stuff. And he sent me a waypoint and said, do not go over here, which is where Brian Nelly won. So, I mean, we know our boundaries, and he helped me out. I help him out anytime that I can, and we just try to work together and not get in each other's way at the same time.
It's awesome to see you, that as brothers and siblings kind of like go, back and forth. And you ended up second and he's third on the AOI list, right?
Yeah. That's it. I got second and he got third. But also, it goes the other way because at Toledo Bend, after I had that tough first day, at the end of the day, I made a late day move and almost made it happen to get my 5 fish and 5 pretty good ones too. But I didn't. I told Nolan, I said, you have a limit. He had a small limit, but it was enough to be in the run for a check. And I told him, I gave him everything I had in that area. I was like, hey, this is, I had some big fish here, and some numbers over here. And he went in there and he had a phenomenal day too, moved way up the leaderboard. And he cut a cut a pretty good check in that event. So just, being able to help each other out, especially in that situation, you're out of it, but the other person, maybe what you learned during your day, because you never go out there. And if you're going out there not learning anything, you're doing it wrong. But just helping each other out, even if you might not think you're on them, is good. But sometimes there's a few things that can really help.
Yeah, and that's good to see that there's that camaraderie and that symbiotic relationship where you both gain something out of this, not just one way. I know I've had you for an hour and 20 minutes, so I thank you, Ewan, for your time. I wanted to give you a couple of minutes to do your plug, shout out whoever you want to shout, sponsors, friends, family, and where can people follow you on social media if that's your thing.
All right, so I've got to thank Dugout Bait and Tackle. Jamie, he rigged my kayak, and everyone knows I'm always using my electronics. I'm really good at it, and part of that is it's rigged right. It's rigged the best. There's no one that does electronics better than them on kayaks, and a lot of my success is, at least the electronics are a factor of it. They great service. If anyone's anywhere in Georgia or Southeast, go to Dugout in Marietta, Georgia. They'll take care of you. Bioinno Power, they power those graphs, and I had a different brand that I'm not going to specify, but prior to that, and I noticed a significant difference when I switched batteries. Even though they're all 12 volts, the previous batteries, I'd start my day at 12.1 volts. These ones I started around 13.5, 13.6, and that helps significantly. Being over 12.6 volts is kind of the magic number with the forward-facing sonar. Revo sunglasses, they're a sponsor of the Ryan's podcast, Ryan and Jeff's at KBN, but they're incredible sunglasses. I've been wearing them for a little over a year now. I've got no complaints at all. I drop them, I throw them off my hat, they slide across concrete. They're great glasses. And use all Seagar line. Z-Man, they help the team out a lot. And I use my Newport vessels, the NK180S. It took me a little while to get used to practicing with the trolling motor and not just going, oh, this place way over here looks awesome, I'm going to go check it out and spend it the whole day. But once I was used to not having to pedal places, it really helped my efficiency during practice.
You also go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
I was just going to say social media. Instagram is Ewing_Minor, and then Facebook's just Ewing Minor. So pretty simple.
There you go. Go follow this young phenom that is Ewing Minor. I got to ask you still with Douglas rods?
No, there was some people that left the company that I was working with. Sure, Donnie and Caleb.
Yep.
And my partnerships are through Dugout. Since Dugout, I'm on the Dugout team, and there's just that connection between Dugout and Douglas just kind of dissolved after they moved on to wherever they went on in their careers. But nothing against the rods. I still love the rods. They're great rods. Used them at the T.O.C. Got big fish in the boat. But I'm trying to work through a couple different brands and find another company that has a quality product, and we'll see where that ends up in next year. And hopefully, I like working with smaller companies.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your big Luz, Abu, Shimano. the big guys in Iowa, I guess. But it's just the customer service that you get from a smaller company like Douglas, for an example, it's top notch, and just supporting small American made companies is, I think that's a big factor in keeping the industry going.
Yeah, and any company, rock company, or whatever company that get to have you on their team are fortunate. A great ambassador, both on and off the water. So again, congratulations, Ewing, to all your success on and off the water. Exciting to see your success. And we looking forward to what comes next year. I am completely sure you're going to be in the running for the T.O.C. and the AOY in any tournaments that you're out there, both locally and regionally. I think you've earned high presses from all your peers in the kayak fishing industry. So congratulations on all your success.
Thank you.
My pleasure, man. So for those out there listening, again, thank you. If you made it this far, go check out the sponsor, douglasoutdoors.com. If you're going to be on the water, always wear your PFDs. Don't forget about your PFDs. If you're going to have a couple of beers while you're out kayak fishing, make sure you drink responsibly. Make sure you make it back home to your loved ones, especially now that winter is coming, water and hypothermia become a factor now. So please take care of yourselves out there in the water. Have a great day, everyone. Peace out.